Now, school is a topic which I'm not really personally comfortable talking about because there wasn't really memories that I'm fond of. Some people might say that high school are the highlights of their life, though I can understand from their point of perspective, but I'll have to disagree on that. So by the time that students graduate high school, they should have some sort of individual characters which is unique or not unique depending on the choices they've made. There's some research about the prefrontal cortex which is responsible for performing, planning, and reasoning, decision making, which isn't fully developed until the age 25 or so. So it's quite interesting to see that those teenagers years where teenagers tried risky things without worrying about the consequences that are later revealed. It's a time where adventurers dare to dream, dare to do, before reality hits them hard, like an arrow to the knee. During my high school years, I wouldn't say I was the good kid nor the bad kid. Friends that can only counted on one hand, an unsociable, invisible, lone gamer who likes to sleep in class. While I was expecting that my grades were going to be worse than others, but who knew? Common sense was not so common after all. I'm not saying that I'm like a genius or prodigy who can get an A without touching a book. But at the very least, I was a B/C student. Now, just for context, my high school was a private school, a place where the average passing scores are higher, where only the best and bright student can apply. Then I realized that most students were just students with more money, and then they weren't so bright after all. I mean, imagine going to tuition every day, including weekends and holidays, getting tips on exams, sometimes even knowing the questions early on, being taught by the professional educator and still get worse grades than me. The point here is not about me bragging. If I have to summarize one word why I was better than them, thinking. Yes, I learned to think early on in my life. While others were blindly memorizing information that's probably going to be obsolete, I learned how to think. While I would blame most of the students for being in that state, considering all they do in tuition or in class is just talk, play with their phones, idling around, and only rushing to copy other students' homework in school during the morning. But also partly because of the type of education system that has programmed us into it. While I'm not judging that all education system is like that where it's training us to become corporate slaves, I just hope that it can improve more as a place where you can nurture each individual into its own shape instead of pressuring them into a circle shape. I spent all my youth thinking, exploring, and doing what I've wanted. I understood who I am, who I want to be, and how I am going to live. Even though it's probably going to be a lonely and frustrating journey because everyone is just fooling around. So you can probably understand why I don't like school so much. Because it wasn't just the place, but also the student in it. In my eyes, they were boring, trivial, and superficial. I hate the fact that some popular leader in their group can decide the group's future. Like, why would you go to that school just because he or she chose it? Or further studying a certain subject just because somebody said it's cool? When I was observing and listening, these kinds of situations are the ones where I actually hate the most during my time at school. It's just ridiculous letting someone else determining your future. Even the teachers and parents who are supposed to be grown-ups were also forcing their opinions. It came to a point where it frustrates me to the point where I loathe their lack of choice and individualism. I did try my best in convincing my classmates, but all I get was contempt. So it was at that time I learned that you can't save people who can't really save themselves, so eventually I just stopped wasting my time and effort on them. I usually spend most of my time in the library mostly just reading mangas, storybooks, and some self-development subjects in a quiet and secluded place. I used to always read a manga named Slam Dunk, which had around 24-volume series. It was one of my favorite stuff to do during recess, and somehow I managed to reread them more than like 20 times during my school days. I mean, come on, I'm a shonen myself. The library is the only place where I can proudly admit that it's great and I enjoyed it, considering the amount of thought-provoking materials it had. It's just sad and surprising that people only come into use during the exams while the library books were mostly ignored. Truthfully speaking, I never really liked school. It wasn't interesting nor the highlight of my life. They can have their privileges, their relationships, and the time of their lives. That's none of my concern, and it should not be your concern as well. You should choose and walk the path that you believe in, even if it seems like the whole world is against you. Back yourself up, and eventually you find a place where you can belong to.